Right, hopefully I'm sorted now. Tech, or whatever, who knows. Anyway, let me just see, is everything working? My channel. Right. Should be okay now, hopefully. Don't know what happened there. So, I'll start again. I had to delete obviously the last lot there. So what I'm talking about here is the term gravity and its capabilities, the definitions, what people are actually talking about. So to clarify, there's a separation that has to be had when we're talking about the dimensions of the Earth. The way in which objects fall have got absolutely nothing to do with the dimensions of the Earth. The globe proponents require it to perform in certain ways in order to make their nonsensical concept stand up. Right? It's nonsensical anyway, but they require it, they have to incorporate it into their sophistry and extrapolate upon it and what it actually is and what it can achieve, so that they can place people in water and stuff all upside down on a wee potato rock and have it pressurised with gas in a medium that's a vacuum. Total nonsensical gibberish that's contrary to everybody's direct experience of their reality and the understanding of a reality that we apply in everyday living. So, as I was saying before I was cut off, I've spoken about this before, and I'd forgotten about it, but I looked at my other channel, the live channel, and realised there was a lot of triggered globites in there who don't like people pointing out the facts of reality. So we're talking about how motion is created in an object, acceleration, whatever you want. Now, in my understanding and in my practical knowing of my reality, an object requires some other substance to be pressing on some other substance in order to make it move. There is no such thing as pull. Pull is a descriptor of things being brought closer to other things. Push denotes taking something away from something else. The application of making anything move, whether you're bringing it towards yourself or pushing it away from yourself, is an applied pressure. Okay? A substance interacting with another substance to push it into motion. Right? Now, in the globe nonsensical jargon, they want to talk about acceleration, motion being created by pulley forces, some sort of mystical entity that's, I don't know what it does, I don't know how you pull, it's magic, it's like things come towards you or some fucking thing. That's no reality. And as I was pointing out before I was interrupted, they talk about the upward force. So if you're going to push something into water, they'll talk about the upward force meeting it in order to push against it. At the same time as they're talking about this upward force, they're saying there's another force acting through it that's pulling something to the centre of the earth. Right? It's just gobbledygook, nonsensical drivel. Right? It doesn't add up. So what we first have to understand is that for a fact. Now, again, I'm going to open this up here. Please send me, I'm going to check my emails. If you are a globe proponent, somebody that thinks they know what gravity is and all its capabilities, send me an email. If you're intellectually honest, if you're a rational, reasonable person that can engage in discussion at a calm level, please email me and come in and have this discussion with me as I go through these aspects. So let me just open up my Gmail. Right, so I'm opened up on the emails. Right, so the reason again I want to highlight why I'm talking about this is because I'm sick and tired of hearing not only globe proponents but flat earth proponents talking about acceleration and motion, right, on physical objects and substance. Now again, in a practical sense, we understand that motion is created by something pressing, pushing on something else. So if people are going to start invoking motion or acceleration by way of pulley forces, because I don't even know what that means. Pull, again, just describes, bringing something closer towards you. Go to your door, a door that opens inwards towards you, right? And you'll see, I pulled the door open because you brought it closer towards you. But your hand goes over the handle. The pressure is now here on the other side of the handle, pushing, pressing it, right? A pressure being applied in order to make the motion happen. This is a physical fact of everybody's reality, okay? No ifs, buts, maybes, or whatever. It's a fact, okay? So, Des Sherwood pointed out in a video because he twigged onto it. When we're talking about things like a pull-off, what you're actually doing is making a pressure on the string, creating a push in whatever direction, and then causing a hook to flick off. You're pushing, okay? So it's very, very simple. These are the facts of your reality. Again, if anybody wants to deny it right now, let me hear what you've got to say. Please come in and let me hear what you've got to say. So again, when we look at this globe concept, it starts to invoke nonsensical physics, right? Unattainable, undescribable, or maybe they can describe their drivel, right? But it's not a practical thing. There's no pull. Pull's not a thing. It doesn't make anything happen. Does he make acceleration happen or motion happen in anything? I hope that's crystal clear. You can get through as many examples as you like. I've seen them in the comment section all triggered because I was talking about tug of war and how it's the same process there, where you're pushing. You're pushing. It's very simple if people slow down the mechanics of what's actually happening, and I'll demonstrate it again for you. You have two opposers on either side of this. This side are pressing on this pressure. Now they're having to exert in this direction. So the angle of the pressure is now here, pushing the rope towards them. The same is happening on the other side. That's what we call tug of war. And people will describe it as, they're pulling on the rope, they're pulling on the rope. But they don't understand that the pull is just a descriptor of bringing it closer towards you. The mechanics of the motion that's happening is pressure being created, push being created. That's what makes motion happen. Okay? So, when we start talking about acceleration and objects falling, and people are trying to invoke pulley forces, they're talking crap. There's no such thing. Yeah, pull is the description of direction of a motion. So I'm also going to bring up, Veronica sent me it the other night, but I'd also seen it myself. Crooks, whatever, I can't remember the name yet. We'll have a look at that. I've got a few videos up here that I'm going to be going through. So buckle in and we'll go through them, right? Let me just gather my thoughts here because I had a path of where I was going with all this. Pushed over by the police. Well, again, for people that have not heard this, I'm going to get through some of these examples. So if you've heard it, you'll need to just suspend your annoyance at the repetition. So when we talk about towing a vehicle, the same thing applies as I was pointing out about opening the door in an inwards direction. If you've got a vehicle that's gone in this direction and it wants to tow another vehicle in this direction, it has a tow bar coming out. The rope is put around it. This car is going in this direction. The pressure is now in here at the internal aspect. Okay, it's going that way and it's applying a pressure to the rope. Okay, that rope is round the other eyelet of the other car and the pressure is now happening here. So the car is being pushed. The rope is being pushed by the car in front. Tension is taken up on the rope. The rope is now pushing the other car in the same direction. Motion requires some sort of pressure. So it's hugely relevant and hugely important that people grasp these things. Because again, when we're talking about our objective reality that we can all demonstrate to each other, we have people that start wandering into discussions about nonsensical aspects that they can't demonstrate. But they talk about it and give credence to it without highlighting the fundamental problems that are there in regards to some of the claims, in particular from the heliocentric globe cult jobby. Right? So we can establish there's nothing in your reality that you can show me that would denote pull. Something's moving, something's pushing it. That's a fact. Okay? So that's got to be established first and foremost before we start even getting into objects out of their equilibrium. Okay? Seeking the equilibrium again. Well, so go and get me a gravity champion. I say, I want somebody that's decent enough to have an actual discussion and display intellectual honesty. Okay? Right. So, where was I going with this? Right, so I've highlighted that. So they talk about the upward force. Okay, so you can't then have some other mystical force acting through the upward force still to pull things down. It's nonsense. Okay, something's being pushed that can be met by the upward force, the resistance of something else. So let me just see here. So again, you know, when we're talking about the way things are falling, something has to take them in that position because everything's in its equilibrium. Okay, if you're taking it out of it, it's going to seek the equilibrium again. What causes that direction, that downward force or acceleration, is there for discussion and to be discovered. What we can point out is the absurdity of people and their claims in regards to how that is, what causes that. Okay? And again, I need to keep reiterating this, it's got nothing to do with establishing the dimensions of the earth. Maybe me and Gav can get into detail about what sometime you're talking about. There's a couple of other running tests happening here this evening. Well, Stuart Smith, this is the thing. What is a magnet actually doing? Yeah? So you can understand it in regards to something like a vacuum cleaner where people think there's a suction happening, but that's not what's happening. There's a depreciation in pressure being created by a mechanical motor that's being pushed, right? That causes a decrease in pressure, and the atmospheric pressure rushes in to fill that void, and that's what pushes the rubbish on your floor into the collector bag of your Hoover. So in magnetics, again, we would have to be looking at some other concept that's contrary to the mechanics as we understand them. What is a magnet? What is it actually doing? They'll not come in for a reasonable chat about it because they know I'm right, and this is their problem. They're intellectually dishonest, and I don't like it when people get to the fundamentals of what it is they're actually talking about. So me as a man, I can understand my reality, the principles and mechanics of what is required to put an object into motion and to accelerate it. So that's why they'll not come in here. They'll only come in here if I'm entertaining it on their terms. giving validity to some pulley force. I mean, what is that? What is that? What's pull? Ask them to define pull. I bet you they can't. It's a descriptor. So again, we'll get into some of the other aspects of gravity, but right from the off, I just wanted to establish that when we're talking about the way in which objects fall, we're certainly not talking about some force that's pulling. Okay, that's impossible. That's contrary to what we know. Aye, send me an email on the top of the screen. I'll check my inbox. For people that are looking just to come in for a chat again today, it's not an open platform for just chat, you know, that's for a Saturday. This is for specific points, so people only request to come in for a chat if it's in regards to what's being discussed here and now. Right. So, I'm going to play a wee video by Julie Sumner Miller. We're going to talk about this idea, as he's described it honestly, the idea of the centre of gravity. Now, quite rightly, as he states in this, I would describe what he's talking about as the centre of mass. Right, this centre of gravity. And we'll get to specific gravity as well. Well, we look at that. Hold on, I just open that up. Just let me settle in here and make sure I'm at where I'm at and I'm not missing anything that I had lined up here. Okay, so equilibrium, a state in which opposing forces or influences are balanced. Okay, so again, when we talk about it, you'll talk to globers, we'll talk about the upward force. Okay, so, you know, we're talking about a force coming this way and a force coming that way, right? Meeting. This is their talks, their descriptions, their nonsense. So what I'm pointing out here is that they're talking about an upward force. At the same time, there's some other mystical force acting through this that's somehow latching on. I don't know how it does it to other objects and pulling them. You know, I hope people can get this because it's just nonsensical, contradictory nonsense. Whatever we come up with, you know, talking about the way in which objects fall, that doesn't define the dimensions that's beneath our feet. Again, it's something totally separate. I don't know why people continually talk about it with relevance in regards to the shape or the dimensions of the earth. It's preposterous. And what people should be realising is, why are these proclaimed flat earthers or opposers to the globe who like to champion themselves, why do they never get to the root of these things and highlight them? You have to ask these questions, because again, it just perpetuates what they actually do is lend credence to this globe concept and its nonsensical drivel by engaging at that level, rather than cutting it off, coming back to mechanical, factual, observable, testable reality that you and I can all demonstrate to each other. Of course it does, Leroy Foster. This is the thing about this globe concept. It needs this imaginary concept force, right, that can achieve all sorts of nonsensical, unattainable, ununderstandable drivel. Demonstrate pull to me without some other thing pressing on something else. It's just nonsense. Right, so if they want to talk about downward forces now, well, it must be something that presses. It's got to be something that's pressing. Right, where am I here? Hold on. Yeah, we've got somebody here that says they want to talk about gravity in a friendly way, so I'm going to give them this opportunity. Let me just open this up here. Just in the game of fairness, right, to give them the opportunity. Just bear with me, people. There you go, Shane Lone Star. Link sent. So we'll give this person the opportunity. We'll go through it bit by bit. Then I've got a couple of videos here that I'm going to go through. Interestingly, just while we're waiting, thought this was astonishing. Pay attention.
Yes, our 2-year-old right now, I'll say, how old are you? And she goes, I'm 4.5, which is her older sister's 4.5. And I go, no, you're not 4.5. And then she grabs my face and goes, 4.5.
That was also kind of a Schwarzenegger a little bit.
Yeah. I'm 4.5, father.
Did you see the transition? Look how smooth it was. Look.
Our 2-year-old right now, I'll say, how old are you? And she goes, I'm 4.5, which is her older sister's 4.5. And I go, no, you're not 4.5. And then she grabs my face and goes, 4. Our 2-year-old right now, I'll say, how old are you? And she goes, I'm 4.5, which is her older sister's 4.5. And I go, no, you're not 4.5.
So by Globe proponents' logic and scientific reasoning, he has the ability to morph into Arnold Schwarzenegger at will. It must be true because I can see it on my telly. Implications of that are quite frightening if you think about it. Did you see it? So I'm awaiting this person who's saying they're going to come in and talk about gravity. I'll get a couple of minutes, and if I don't get any show, I will just continue on. That's Stephen Watson. Ah, so other people are getting it recommended. It's funny that, isn't it? It does change. It's a smoothness here. And again, you know, highlighting why you can't trust things that you're seeing on your TV screen, you know. I always seek, when you're looking for real worldly facts, it has to be attainable to you directly. Still not getting a show here. I thought they'd have been rushing in here to discuss their nonsensical forces. He's got a couple of minutes, Storm Yamaha. I'm not going to sit here all night waiting. I don't know why people say they're there and they can come in and speak and it takes them forever to appear. Aye, so again, I'm seeing a lot of people talking about this stuff and it just annoys me. So. Example of a pulling force. I'll type it into Google here, right? Pushing and pulling is making use of another force as well as pressure, which is force applied by an amount of weight. An example of push as a force would be to push on a swing. An example of pull as a force would be opening a door. But they're both the same things. And again, I highlighted this before in the other channel. These are examples that are given to children. Okay, he's coming.
Hey, Del, I'm here.
Nice one. How's it going? Can you hear me?
I'm all right.
Are you not showing your face?
Oh, no. Well, at least not on this phone. I could. I mean, I'd have to set it up, though, so
Okay.
why don't we just continue?
Alright, so we're here to talk about gravity. So before we go any further, what's your definition?
My definition of gravity. Okay. It is a bit complicated, but we can go ahead and just use what Einstein's defined it as in general relativity.
Can you just define it from your own? Can you define it? Again, I don't know if you know me, but I'm not really interested unless people can speak to me from their own experience and their own understanding. Quote mining and referencing, idols and stuff like that doesn't really impress me. I'm not interested in that. So what I require is you to give me your understanding, something that I can observe or test in my reality that you have done. I understand the linguistical aspects of the concept, but I'm not really looking for a concept. I'm looking for some sort of tangible aspect of my objective reality that you and I can both reference and agree upon.
Fair enough. I actually had a conversation with somebody about this morning, because I don't know if you've seen this, but there's the new interview that came out. I think that QE was talking about, Quantum Eraser was talking about, where it's described as gravity not being a force, as described.
So
I just wanted to go over.
Just in your understanding, what is gravity?
Right. So that's what I'm getting at, is that the way that we define the word force in science is just something something that compels something else to move a different direction,
yep,
or to move at a different speed. And so
what causes that? What causes something to move in a different direction or a change its speed? What would that be? That physical interaction? How would you describe that?
Well, simply as a force.
What is it doing though? Describe it mechanically.
Well, like I said, to explain that would get complicated, because it's like I said, the curvature of space-time.
But that's
thing. But
you're in the realms of concept here. I'm not interested in mathematical concepts. I'm looking for mechanical aspects of my objective reality, in regards to substances that are tangible. I'm not wanting concepts. So if you're saying something that moves, so you understand that in order for something to move, there has to be something that causes that, correct?
Right.
So in my understanding of my reality, it has to be an impression made by some other substance that presses upon something else and causes it to move. Would you say that's correct or incorrect?
I'd say that's true in most cases, but I'm sure you. Sorry, go ahead.
What's the cases where it wouldn't be true?
No, in most cases, I heard you earlier describing like the push, or something has to be pressing on something and pushing it or pulling it.
No, nothing pulling. What do you mean by pull? We need to understand these definitions and what the mechanical aspects actually are. So again, just define pull then for me.
Well, no, what I'm trying to contrast that from what's actually happening. I heard you describing push or pull when this type of force is considered an inertial force, and you can understand that as like being in a car and having the car like take a left turn, and everything in the car moves to the right.
So
So
it's
there's not actually a push or pull happening in this situation. It's actually because of the
no, but the
frame of
car the car's
reference.
changing direction, and my body wants to go in the same direction. But what caused me
Right.
to be in motion in the first place? What caused the car to be in motion in the first place? And even to turn the direction of the car all requires a push.
No, yeah, you're correct.
Right,
And that's why.
so we agree then that objects in motion require a pressure, something pushing on them.
Well, no, in most cases, but in the case of inertial forces, which this one is known as,
But
it's
but changing direction requires push.
yeah, like I said, it's more complicated than that. It's like the mass itself is supposedly warping space-time,
Let's not,
which
not let's
you,
let's not run ahead of ourselves. I'm sorry to keep bringing you back here because we want to bring this into
yeah,
simplistic layman's terms so that we can all understand it. Okay, so
for
you're
sure.
talking about a scenario of travelling in a vehicle. Okay, now every aspect of entering into that vehicle, getting the vehicle started, getting the vehicle in motion, all requires a push source, something pushing against something else that results in what we call motion or acceleration. Do you understand?
Yeah, sure.
So when I'm
Well, that's why.
traveling, if I'm traveling with the car in a straight line, and then the car changes direction by way of push because I grip the steering wheel, and I then push downwards or upwards, both are the same force. Push, if you want to call it a force, it's a pressure. Now that changes direction. My body wants to go straight, so I feel my weight shift. The weight shifts because it wants to continue in a straight line. The walls of the car or my seat, the shape of the seat or my seatbelt holds me firmly, but I can feel the effect of that. So motion, change of motion, acceleration requires a push source. And if you're going to deny that, you keep saying in most cases. So if it's not the case in some cases, can you highlight something for me where it's not the case then?
Well, no, that's why I brought up that term, inertial force. It's also known as a pseudo force, and that way we don't have to focus on
But
the
but
abstract.
you're talking about a
Yeah, go
change in
ahead.
direction and an effect that comes through a change in direction.
Yeah, that's correct. Like I
And
said, the way that it's described in general relativity is, again, the warping of space-time, which is a phenomena that you're not going to be able to witness directly. So
so
it's
look,
totally going to be an abstract.
it is an
Go ahead.
abstract concept. It's a nonsensical thing. It's warping and bending of space time. I mean, is there some practical thing that you can demonstrate? And I don't mean lycra over a drum. You can't. So you're talking about a concept, an abstract theory.
Well, that's why I'm trying to move past it. Is so maybe we can come back to that whole thing of it, but so we don't have to be in the abstract. We can talk about the idea of it being perceived as a force,
Now let's
because
just get back to a basic understanding. So, in
yeah,
my understanding from the Globers, right, gravity is a pulling force, correct?
no,
What is it then?
no. Well, like I told you, it's an inertial force, so it's not actually kinetic in nature. Like it's not something being physical, grabbing something and pushing it or pulling it. And so that's what I'm saying. I just want to get back to the basic and just say the law of gravitation, like what it actually is doing, what we can predict that it does with mass and other masses and how they'll affect each other. This is we can observe ourselves, and we can observe this, right now, even without tools.
Like, what's the mechanics? So,
Um,
what are you talking about? You're using these terms and just throwing them out there. Get to the basics, the crux of it, the mechanical interactions of tangible substance that I can reference to understand what it is you're talking about.
yeah, right. That's what I'm saying is that masses that exist in reality. So that the equation for universal gravitation, which holds, it's just describing two masses. You just take both those masses, multiply them together, divide that by their distance squared,
I don't know what you're
and
talking about, mate. Are you talking
you.
about the Cavendish experiment? Are you now talking about mass attracting mass here or something?
That's right.
Right, so you went from
That's what we observe.
Einstein's to Newtonian.
No, see that's the problem is that people they see them as two separate things, when in fact Newton had only assumed that that was the cause of it, is some sort of magical attraction, when in fact we now understand it as the curvature of space-time. But the fact is that to us, we do
what's
observe it.
space-time? What's the curvature of space-time? What's that?
Supposedly, it's just the construct that everything's in, and the mass itself distorts it.
So
And
like
the bigger the mass, the bigger the
a
distortion.
medium. So you could call this space-time the ether then.
If you call it whatever you want, but
So it's some unattainable medium that we don't know about, that we can't quantify or practically demonstrate in any way, shape, or form.
Well, no, that's not true though. Because if he had only made this theory and had no tests, like a test upheld it, it would just be looked at just like you're saying. But almost immediately there were tests, and there still are. So I think it was 1919. There was an eclipse.
Never mind eclipses. So can we get back to mechanical interactions between substances and reality? Can you define pull for me?
Pull?
Mm-hmm.
Sure. It's I guess it would be the force of pulling something towards you.
So what is
so
that? What's the mechanics? Describe the mechanics of it.
I mean, it depends on the system you're talking about, but it would just be something that would be exerting a force that brings the other object towards it.
So what brings other objects towards other objects then? What's the mechanics? If you want to bring an object closer to you, how would you describe the mechanics of
that? You'd have to overcome the inertia of whatever you're pulling, and...
No. You keep saying that. We have to understand what we're talking about. We're just going to keep talking past each other here, mate. Right? If I want to move any object, put any object into motion, I have to pressure it in some way. Do you understand that?
What do you mean by what do you mean by
pressure has to be applied?
Okay, so I'm imagining like pulling a rope, like you're pulling a rope with a block attached to it.
Yeah, you're using pressure. If you grip a rope, do it right now. Grab a rope. Note that you're squeezing the rope, causing a pressure. Now, what direction is the force, if you want to call it that? Where is that going? What direction? It's gone in this direction. As your hands grip that, you're now digging in and pushing against the rope to bring it towards you.
Yeah, so that the direction of the force is towards you.
Yes. So it's pushing, but it's acting upon the rope and a pushing.
I'm not sure if I understand what you're saying, but it's.
Can you see my screen? Can you see me?
Oh yeah, I see it.
So we've got a rope here, right? You're holding that end and I'm holding this end. Okay? I have to squeeze. Now I have to create a pressure going in the way in this direction towards me. Right? So the pressure, the force has been applied in this direction towards me. It's push.
I understand. Right. It doesn't necessarily have to be, because you could be turned around, for instance, and have the rope on your chest.
But then the pressure would be here in the inward part of the rope, just like I described with towing a car. There's the eyelet or the tow bar of a car, which is here at this side. Now I put the rope around and the car goes in this direction. The force, the pressure is now here internally.
Right.
Pushing the rope in that direction.
Right.
Right?
So that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. That would be the equal and opposite reaction to the...
Why is it so difficult just to establish first principles and a basic understanding of the simplicity of reality here? It's like, I don't want to outright accuse you, but it seems to me like you're evading the facts because you know what it implies. And I think that's disingenuous and very intellectually dishonest of you.
No, I mean, you use a very specific example. But if you
I've
use
asked
a
you
different
continually.
specific example...
I've asked you continually to give me an example of a pulling force.
Absolutely. A magnet.
What's
you
that?
Have a magnet.
What? You don't know what a magnet is. You don't know what it's actually doing.
No, I mean, I have a pretty good idea of what it's doing.
You don't know. You're up for a prize then, son, because nobody knows exactly what's going on with magnetism.
I'm not sure if that's entirely true. I mean, I guess if you went down to the bare bones, like subatomically, maybe not, but we do know that the electrical, like the electrons are, if you have a permanent magnet, they're all in the same direction. They're polarized in the same direction. So they're going to cause, whatever object you're using it for to either attract or repel. So I mean,
So
you could use this you could do this, and you could do an experiment where you're pulling something with that magnet.
But there's no something pressing on something else here. What you're trying to invoke is something that kind of that brings something towards it without actually touching it, and it draws it like a magical. That's nonsensical to me, mate. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Everything in my reality, if anything wants to be put in motion, if any motion's created, something's pressing on it.
Yeah, I mean, you just use that example of a magnet. You can even use an electromagnet, but you get the same phenomena where it's either pushing or pulling something without physically contacting it or creating this pressure.
But this is what I'm saying. Magnets and what you're talking about aren't fully defined and fully understood. Up to that point, every single thing that I can demonstrate or witness or quantify requires a pressure, a pushing source, pushing on something else in order to put it into motion. Do you deny that?
Well, I mean, I just gave you an example. I would also say gravity applies as one of those.
Well, this is the point.
But
This is the point, because the examples that you're given are undefined properly. They're not fully known and understood, because we don't know what this medium actually is, whether it be the warping and bending of space-time or an ether or whatever, right? We can both agree that nobody really knows that. So, in regards to magnetism, you don't know what's happening there either. I can talk about magnetism in regards to a decrease in air pressure, like a vacuum that I pointed out, a hoover in your home, a mechanical device that causes a decrease in pressure, which causes the atmospheric pressure to rush into that void. High pressure seeks to low pressure, which pushes the objects on your floor into the collector basket of your hoover.
Yeah, I see.
Right? So I could say the same thing about magnetism. Well, it's causing a warping of the ether or space-time that's causing it to fill the void. And whatever's there in that vicinity is pushed into that void. So, but I don't know that. I can just, surmise like anybody else, but it's irrelevant because these things are not established fully yet. So let's leave that by the side. We're talking about gravity and how it's utilised and invoked in regards to the globe and pulling. Right? So it's not a magnet, because you're not saying gravity is a magnet, are you?
No, of course not.
Right. So it's an irrelevance then. It's a false equivalence.
No, the relevance comes in because I thought you were making an absolute statement by saying everything requires this. I was giving an example of something that doesn't, and even something that you're right. Maybe the bare bones of it is either misunderstood or not understood, but we do know the effects of it, and we can predict the effects of it, and that's also the same with gravity.
You can predict effects, but you don't know what the ultimate cause is. The thing is that we're part of the effects. So the ultimate prime mover, the initial force that put everything into motion, is unknown because we're part of the effects. So we can understand that. We know that. But in regards to objects and their interactions with each other in this realm of effect, cause and effect, we know that in motion is required. You need a pressure, you need something pushing on something else.
Yeah, I mean, I again just have to disagree with that absolute statement. But
give me an example then. No magnetism that we don't fully understand or can define properly. Give me some other mechanical, example of an object being put in motion without a pressure being applied to it.
Well, you gave one with the vacuum, sort of. A vacuum cleaner even.
But it's a mechanical implement that causes a decrease in air pressure, which causes the surrounding higher pressure to fill the void. Mm-hmm. So that rushing inwards is a pushing force that moves any object that's in that lower air pressure vicinity.
Yeah, right. But that's what I'm saying. This is another example of something that's you're causing to be pulled towards you.
It's not being pulled, though. You're not listening. It's the air rushing in to fill the void that's pushing the object. Like wind. You know how wind blows a tree?
Right.
Like the tree's in motion because the wind, the air, the matter is pressure on the leaves and the branches.
Yeah, so it's moving the trees.
That's right.
Okay,
So,
I mean, like I said, there's because you're gonna take out the magnetism, but I mean
but
there's
never mind
plenty of
magnetism,
other.
because gravity's not about magnetism.
Well, yeah, you're correct, but gravity does work in a way where it doesn't need to actually physically come in contact with something the same way
But that's
magnetism.
contrary to my direct experience of every other aspect of my reality. Because people are talking about gravity as some sort of pull, and again, I'm asking you to define what pull is. It's not a
Yeah,
force.
no, but
It's not an
if they've defined it
interaction.
that way, that's incorrect. That's an incorrect description. Someone who's describing it that way.
So if I says to
Um,
you, well, I dropped an object and it accelerated towards the floor, you're going to say to me, gravity pulled it towards the centre of the earth.
yeah, we could say that like colloquially, like we'd say that, but it wouldn't be 100% accurate.
But you're still going to say
Right.
it's pulling it.
Yeah, because I mean, it puts the idea in your head.
But pulls,
So you understand?
but
Sorry, go
pulling.
ahead.
So pulling just means an object going closer to another object.
Well, no. The pulling itself would be the incorrect way of stating it. But if we're talking socially or not scientifically, then it's
No,
appropriate, I suppose.
no. Scientifically, this is the Globe claim. There's a force, a non-geometric non-entity at the centre of a mass that somehow pulls things towards its centre. So that definition of pull, as I understand it, simply means one object being brought closer to another object. But in my mechanical understanding of everyday experience, in order to bring one object closer to another object, you require a pressure to make that happen.
Yeah. Again, at that point alone, I disagree with, but I
It's,
don't want to
Give me an
cause
example of
a.
why you disagree with that. You'll no give me an example.
No, I did. I gave you an example, but you didn't like the example, so you threw
What
it
is the
out.
example again?
Magnetism.
But your gravity's no magnetism.
I know it's not magnetism, but it's an example of a force
And
where you don't actually have to
you don't
physically
know the full
contact someone to
mechanics
put
of
pressure on it.
magnetism either. So you're using something that's undefined, that's unknown fully, like magnetism, and you're trying to utilise that into your belief system, which is dishonest, because you don't know what magnetism really is or the mechanical functions here.
I mean, we do understand the mechanical fun. We understand almost everything down to the atomic level of what magnetism is,
Right, okay.
electromagnetism.
hmm
But
And
that's neither here
that's
nor there.
attraction of pulliness that you can't define. There's no such thing. That's
I
like
think
me.
that pulling that we keep saying the pulling.
Tell me how I could get the TV towards me without some sort of pressure being applied to it.
You could have a powerful magnet, like at a car, like an auto shop or an auto yard.
And what's happening? What's the mechanics of what's happening there?
You turn on the
But
very high powered.
what's the physical interaction? What's the mechanics of when you turn the magnet on or bring it to the TV? What's actually happening? What's the interaction between the two things?
Yeah, what you do is you turn on the machine, and then what that's going to do is it's going to send a current through the electromagnet, which is going to give it a charge that's so strong and so focused, or what's the word I'm looking for? It's like all the entire charge is focused in one direction, and it's going to be strong enough to like either attract, well, because you're going to want to attract the TV, and so the metals in the TV are going to be attracted to that negatively charged what do you call that? To either negative or positively charged electromagnet. And so that attracts it to one another. It has to do with
We're just not getting anywhere here, mate. We're not getting anywhere here. I'm trying to talk to you as an honest man, as an individual. Another man speaking to another man. And I've says to you, my understanding of my reality, an object in motion or to accelerate anything like a car or whatever, every aspect, the mechanical aspects of everything to do with it is something, some piece of material matter pressing on some other piece of material matter in order to make it move. But
well, that's not true.
You're talking. It is true. It is true. Go and give me an example of something. I know you're going to keep saying magnetism, but you don't know what it is.
No, but okay. So the example that we were just given with the car yard and the TV, the actual atom itself the proton and the electron, they have opposite charges. So they're the ones that dictate what's like the electron itself is going to dictate how these attractions are either repelled or attracted. And so
attraction again is just
one of the four fundamental forces.
Attraction again is just another word for pull. Another word to describe some object coming closer to another object. It's no defining the mechanics of what's actually happening.
Well, I mean that's actually that's intrinsic in those elements themselves. Like in the proton and in the electron, they're attracted to one another, and the electrons are repellent to the other ones. So this is what causes things like electricity and things like magnetism and all that kind of stuff.
Pulling, attraction and repellent, it's just the same as push and pull, right? You're just using the same words, but different words to describe the same thing. What you're describing is two objects coming closer together or two objects going further apart. That's what you're describing. Now, what you don't know is the mechanics of how that actually happens in regards to magnetism.
Yeah, well, any deeper understanding beyond that is like the reason why that happens, like what caused that to exist. I mean, I couldn't tell you, but that's like
that's fine, exactly. So we're getting somewhere now, right? So you know that, right? So that's fine. So what I'm saying to you is these undefined, unknown regions. Let's set that aside, okay? Because we still have to discover that. But everything else in my reality is telling me that in order for something to move either closer or further away from something else, push-pull, there has to be some pressure applied to one of the objects in order to make it move.
No, I understand that and I see that. I'm not sure if you are aware before of the inertial force concept or that kind of stuff, but there are several other examples that do something similar. They appear as a force in our everyday life. They accelerate a mass.
Concepts are no use to a man that wants to understand the mechanics of his reality. That's in the realms of man's linguistical, gibberish. I can demonstrate to you without using words exactly what I'm talking about. So, anyway, I appreciate you coming on and having a bash, but we're just not going to get anywhere. There has to be intellectual honesty, Again, I can be honest. I understand, these terms and what people are talking about, and the language that's being used, attractive, repellent, it's the same as push-pull. It's a descriptor of objects coming closer together or further apart. What I'm talking about is the mechanics that's required in order to achieve that motion or acceleration. Okay, so there's physical aspects that we can know and demonstrate where it's one thing pressing on something else to create that to happen, and then we're in the realms of magnetism or electromagnetism where it's unknown, it's undefined, the mechanics of what's actually happening with these devices.
All right, Dale, I understand. Yeah, I'll go then, but if you just let me say one closing thing, just so my point doesn't get misunderstood or whatever. The fact is that there is a force that we're witnessing because of the falling of objects, the way in which things are moving in a certain direction when placed in the air. That defines a force. And the other thing I was going to say was just to clear up what we said about the electromagnetic force. As we know, there are four fundamental forces, two of which, the weak and the strong one, we don't have to worry about because they don't come up in everyday life. But the electromagnetic force is understood, and the intrinsic relationship between the proton and the electron being attracted to one another, that again is just a fundamental law of nature. The reason why that exists that way, it's unclear, but it is understood.
The mechanics are not understood fully at that level. So witnessing and observing the way in which objects fall, again, is fine, but when people start trying to extrapolate into the realms of abstract about what that causes is where I have a serious issue with it. And again, talking about gravity and this pulling aspect causing motion, it's nonsensical to me, because again, motion, as far as I can tell, my reality requires a change in pressure.
Yeah, it seems so. And I'll say that gravity isn't completed. The understanding of gravity is not completely finished with, and so maybe hopefully in our lifetime,
And what's your
somebody
understanding
will.
of gravity in regards to the dimensions of the Earth? Does it define the dimensions of the Earth?
No, it doesn't define it on its own, but it does help to give idea to how its shape became what it is.
Yeah,
Because
that's
a sphere would be
conceptual.
the most natural.
That's conceptual again, part of the idea or the concept of a globular Earth. That's why, but it doesn't define the globular Earth. It doesn't give you any measurable, quantification of the dimensions of the Earth.
Right.
What is it?
I mean, you're right. The
What,
gravity
what,
alone wouldn't do that.
what's happening with gravity as well? Obviously, you're going to be one of these people that believes that gravity causes bodies of water to be able to bend and display convexity upon the surface. What's your understanding of this force or this energy? What is it that it's doing to a substance like water that allows it to behave like that?
Yeah, I think it's more simpler than some people make it seem, is because if you think about everything, except for the things that are lighter than air, but everything else, so basically everything is being compelled towards the earth. So, whatever the shape of the earth would be, the water would conform to its shape.
The container.
You know what I mean?
But in physics, we understand fluids to take the shape of their containers. That's an observed, tested, phenomena that's well understood and applied in everyday living. What you're talking about is not a container. A globe's not a container.
Well, yeah, because I'm introducing the idea that everything is compelled towards the earth. Like everything wants to be.
It's nice that you use the word idea, because that's exactly what it is. Just an idea. It's not a demonstrable thing.
Well, I would disagree. I would say that if you were to show what the shape of the earth was, and show that gravity attracts things to the earth, then understand that the water being where it's at.
What's it doing to the molecular structure of water that allows it to have a kind of elasticity?
I mean, it's a liquid. It's a fluid. Any fluid is gonna, like you said, conform to its shape.
Conform to the shape of the container. I mean, it's defined in physics as that.
Well, if it were, say, if there were no gravity and everything was able to float around, like every liquid would be in the shape of the container, whether it was on the ground or on the walls or on the outside surface of something. So, it just happens that the gravity brings everything down.
But
so when you have a cup,
in a demonstration aspect, we understand it to be a container, not the exterior of a ball. Or a ball's not a container. You have to admit that. A ball's not a container of anything unless you put something inside it. The exterior,
yeah, I agree.
The exterior of any object is not a container.
No, absolutely, I agree with you. But I would say that if you have a cup, let's say the cup is the container.
Aye.
If you had a cup, the water is going to sit at the bottom of the cup because the water is attracted to the earth. It's going to go down towards the earth.
So then you would have to extrapolate up and say that the earth's some sort of container then that's shaped like a cup.
No, I'm saying that's why it's in its container. And so the same thing with if you had gravity being in the center of the earth, then you can have the water around the whole earth and trying to find its the closest it can get to the center, which is just like in lakes and the ocean and stuff. It's always going to be pulled down.
So water running off a mountaintop. So if we're talking about mass being the cause of gravity, and the more mass that you have would be more gravity, correct? Right. So why then is water running off a mountain ranges to the valleys where there's less mass? Does gravity have not only a downwards but a sidewards pull force thing? So it can pull things sidewards as well as doing?
Sure, any direction, wherever the center of the most mass is.
But the mountain ranges get more mass than the valley.
Yeah, that's the thing though, is the mountain is still on the earth, and so you're right that.
I know, but the part that the valleys get less mass.
Yeah, but still the descent below that, down when you keep going, there's still more earth down there. So you're right that there is more mass next to it than on the other sides and stuff, and so you could do a test. Like there's a mountain experiment they did up there in Scotland
200 years ago, but I don't see any abseilers being pulled into the side of fucking mountain faces.
Yeah. There's like a pendulum, it gets pulled to the side.
What, 200 years ago? Have you done it? Have you abseiled down the side of a mountain and been pulled into the side of it?
I haven't, but I looked at the data from it's called the Gray satellite, and it looks at the local gravity in different places. But so yeah, anyways, you wouldn't expect the water to go towards the mountain. Same thing with those balls. The balls that are hanging in that experiment, the
But
balls
hang on
aren't
a now.
actually.
But hang, this is a contrary, nonsensical stuff. The more mass denotes more gravity, right? So
That's
we're
right.
up the Pyrenees that's attached to the Earth, right? And at the side of the fucking Pyrenees, there's a sheer drop of thousands of feet into a valley which contains less mass than the top of the mountain, but the water's running off the top of the mountain down into the valley.
Okay. So if you had all the arrows pointing at the object that we're talking about, let's say it's water, whatever it is, you have water, the arrows pointing coming from where the mass is. You're right, there would be an arrow to the right where the mountain is, but there would be still more arrows coming from the center of the Earth, pointing up at this object. And so there's still much more gravity coming from the center of the Earth. But you're right. It does increase slightly more than it was, but it's still not enough to make something else move towards that instead of towards the center of the Earth.
Doesn't make any sense to me. So, this gravity thing again, it doesn't have any dimensions to it. This centre of gravity, what's at the centre? What's at the
Center
centre?
of mass.
What's at the centre of the mass? What is the stuff that creates the gravity? I mean, what is it? Has it got some sort of geometry to it? Is it a
Yeah.
physical substance? Is it a
No, you're right. It's a geometric concept because it's not like saying that there's the material there is what's attracting it. It's not that it wouldn't matter what the material was.
So it's not a
Same thing
matter.
with
It's not something that's material. It's no matter. It's not something that's
no,
actually.
it is matter, but it's not the properties of the matter itself that's doing it. It's just the fact that it's a mass, and so that's the center of any mass. It just happens to be where the most, like if you were to say, like if you were to point at a planet or a sphere or something, and you were to say, where's most of the gravity coming from? Like those arrows I was talking about, the biggest arrow would be coming from the very center, because uh, that's where you can concentrate all of the
So if I had
force.
so if I had a bun, right, a bun, and then I cut a hole in the middle of it, and I removed the centre of the mass. Is there something there? Is there something in there now?
I believe so. I mean, they say there's a molten core and it's very dense.
What, a molten
But
core at the centre of a muffin?
no. I thought you were talking about the Earth. But yeah. With the muffin, okay.
So if
Is
I've
there
got a
something
muffin
there?
and I identify the centre of mass, not the centre of gravity, the centre of its mass, right? And then I bore a hole like I get a cookie dough cutter and I take the centre out of it. What's there in the middle now?
Yeah, but even if there were nothing there, if you were talking about something that was a sphere, if you were still talking about something that was a sphere, the center of mass from something that's outside of that, like maybe distant from it, would still be its center,
What?
because that's where the vectors of all the points would be coming from. I'd have to show you a picture. It's kind of hard to
Not
describe,
a
but
picture, just if you can come back with some mechanical aspect to my reality with tangible substance and demonstrate what you're talking about, then that would be fantastic. So I appreciate you coming on and having a bash anyway, my man. At least you've been
sure.
respectful and all that stuff. I can only what's the word? Tip my hat at that. So appreciated.
Oh yeah, of course. And it's a pleasure being on here. I'll just say again though that you're right in it seeming like a magical force or whatever, because it is doing something bizarre and eerie and it's not fully understood.
Because it's just a
But at the very
concept.
least,
It's just a
yeah.
concept. Aye, well, that's it. Well, the intellectual honesty of Globe proponents should be there to realise that and stop trying to talk about it like it's a fact and a given. Because they don't
Well,
know.
no, sorry, go ahead.
No,
I was saying that the fact is though that there is a force. That's the most important part. We witnessed a force occurring, and so even if you didn't want to call it gravity and all the things that
so,
go along
there's
with
a
it,
force at the centre of my muffin, even though I've taken the centre of its mass away. There's a force in the centre where there's a hole where there's nothing. There's still a force
yeah.
there.
I mean, have you ever seen like when they show like a figure, what do you call it, an ice skater, and they're doing their spinning,
Aye.
and they're talking about the center of their mass?
Uh huh.
That's it's just basically a concept. The center of the mass is just going to determine where the average collection, the position of most of their mass is. And so
That's the centre
on a
of
sphere,
mass. They call it the centre of gravity, but it's the centre of mass. You
yeah,
can find the balance.
yeah, center of mass determines the
The
center of
central
gravity.
point of any mass where you could balance it. And if you
Right.
move away from that, it's going to topple. But that's just the centre of mass. This invisible stuff that people, this conceptual aspect that people going about is just nonsensical, as far as I'm
No,
concerned.
yeah,
Because
they're referring to the same thing.
aye, it's just interchangeable. It just depends on what your bag is. I call it the
Exactly.
centre of mass.
But that's exactly why spheres is the shape that is the most uniform, because in a spherical shape, the position that would be the center of that mass is always going to be somewhat near the center. As long as it's perfectly shaped, the center of it, center of mass or the center of gravity will be close to the very center of that sphere. Whereas like a figure skater, they can move their arms and they can move around, and the center of mass is going to change.
I can get any object and find the centre of its mass. It's the point where it will balance in equilibrium.
Oh yeah, this is true. This is true.
Right.
But that's how spheres are formed, is because they're not perfectly spherical.
What makes a bubble in a body of water if I blow air out of my lungs? What's causing that to make a sphere?
Similar reason, similar concept. It has to do with the fact that if you start from a point and you go every direction, either you go into every direction or you're pulling from every direction. That line going in every direction is going to make a sphere if it's the same distance.
But the air's been formed into a sphere in a body of water because the pressure's equal in every direction around it. So it's the pressure pushing inwards against the air that wants to expand.
Right.
So
it wants to expand in every direction.
Right. So there's no mystical energies there. It's just the mechanics.
Right. That's what I'm saying. That's why spheres are actually more. They're more part of nature than people understand, because they are.
Where in nature does nature make spheres?
Yeah.
Whereabouts in nature does it make spheres?
Well, I don't know. You might not agree with this one, but everything that's large enough that's affected by gravity eventually forms into a sphere. Because of the reason that we're saying just now.
So I'm going to turn into a sphere the older I get.
You said what?
So I'm going to turn into a sphere at some point.
Well, I mean, that's kind of why. That's how the understanding is that the planets that form that way, the stars, which are basically all gas, are being compelled only by that force, and if that force is
so gas in a
just
vacuum,
as strong.
How did gas in a vacuum pull together to make a sphere?
Because if you have introduced something like gravity,
but
so you're right.
But how did that come about for talking about a gas? Because I thought it was mass, that created it. But gas in a vacuum, and we just understood that gas wants to expand outwards in every direction to fill the containment or fill the void. So what happened in this vacuum that made the gas pull together?
Yeah. So without gravity, that's probably would have happened very, very quickly. It would have just kept dissipating and going everywhere. But the fact that mass has this property that makes it and it doesn't run out of distance. And so if there's a gas, a huge cloud, eventually those molecules are going to attract to one another until bigger masses are formed, which have bigger gravities.
Well, that's contrary to my understanding of reality, because gas doesn't behave like that. Gas expands outward equally to fill the void of the container. It's a fluid. It doesn't contract inwards.
Right. Well, I mean, usually without this force,
you see what I mean?
Automatic force.
Real reality contradicts these concepts.
I mean, I don't know. We've observed the effects of gravity, though, like with orbits and things like that. So we see it happening, everywhere. And the bigger the mass.
You see luminaries moving, and people have extrapolated a concept and tried to attach it to the natural phenomena that they're witnessing. Although these things are unattainable, they're intangible, nobody's been to them, nobody knows exactly what they are. But you've got people trying to make all these stories up.
Yeah, I mean, I could see how if you didn't accept those, then you wouldn't believe that. But
so you understand that you have to put faith into that. Then the stuff that you're talking about, it's a faith-based belief.
Well, this faith-based belief has been used to do things like I said, discover Neptune. Neptune wasn't discovered by an observation; it was discovered by well, they were looking at Uranus, and they did the equations of gravity and
But it was
Kepler's
already
laws.
there. It was already there.
Yeah, it was already there, but they
The
didn't know it was
concept, the
there. They'd never
concept,
seen it before.
the concept never made it appear.
Well, no, but the mathematics and the movements of other planets told them that there was a giant planet somewhere missing, only by using these equations that were the universal law of gravitation and Kepler's orbital mechanics.
Right. Okay.
And then they looked and they found it. They found Neptune that way.
Right.
Yeah, and then the other thing I was going to say, Sputnik, the satellite, and then all the other satellites, the effect that things are orbiting is a consequence of the understanding of gravity as well.
Well, I disagree because the Earth being a gaseous environment where a gas fills the container and then people starting to invoke things like we exist in a medium that's a vacuum and there's no separation between us and the vacuum, again, is contrary to all observed aspects of reality and the applications of the mechanical understanding of the substances in our direct reality. So getting a vacuum and sticking balls of gas in there, no, that's total nonsense. If I want to vac a system out and I have a slight hairline fracture in that, it's no going to work, right? Gas,
I agree.
high pressure will move into the low pressure regions and fill that space. Fluids will take the shape of their container. Containers are not the exterior of balls or cubes or, shapes. It has to be a container of some sort. So that's what I want to point out. We have these abstract theories and concepts, right, that people go into, but in our everyday reality as human beings, if I take away all your Google and all this education that you've been told, and I'm just interacting with you man to man, you would have a real difficult task trying to convince me, a man of the world, that, these things make any sense whatsoever because you've got nothing practical to demonstrate.
Sure. I mean, what you said about the gas pressure and the vacuum and all that stuff, and I don't have to convince you. You don't have to be convinced about this, but when you talk about that force and these two different pressures being next to each other, you're right in the case of two different pressures. So if you have something like down here, 14 psi, and a vacuum right next to each other, something's going to happen real fast.
But 14 psi is a measure of weight.
Say again? Yeah, it is.
It's a measure of weight
per square inch.
It's a weight measurement.
Well, it's a pressure measurement, which is the weight pressing against the surface.
That's right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right, but so what I was going to say next was we witness it 14 psi down here, but
and then it decreases
before we even say again.
And then you're going to say it decreases as you move upwards.
Well, I was going to say where it decreases too, because in Colorado here in the United States, it's already 10 psi, which is already a 4 psi difference, which is enough to create a vacuum cleaner. Like a vacuum cleaner has about 4 psi difference.
So if you stood on a scale, right now and you weighed, what do you weigh?
If I weighed on a scale up there?
Mm-hmm. No, if I put you on a set of scales that are within a set parameter that's defined, right? Like, weight scales, like measures stones, kilos, that kind of stuff. And I stand you on that. What weight are you? Say what's your weight?
I would estimate somewhere just about the same, maybe a few grams less, maybe.
What weight are you?
About 175 pounds, so that would be...
So if I then, take a thin slice off the top of your head and then I put the scales on top of your head and I put that thin slice on top of it, that scale, the weight reader's not going to even register that thin slice, but does that mean to say there's no matter there?
Right, okay, so then in this case, you wouldn't notice a difference then.
Aye.
You wouldn't notice it. It'd be so small you wouldn't notice it.
That's right, but the fact is that there's still matter there.
Yeah.
Right. Anyway, right, I'm going to move on, mate, as I say, I appreciate you coming on.
Okay, sure, yeah. Cheers. I was going to just say that about the vacuum, but,
vacuums are nonsensical. So. A vacuum is, the absence of anything. Vacuums don't exist in my reality. There's no such thing as nothing. There's no such thing as a void that's empty of something. That doesn't exist. That doesn't compute.
Well, we can call it a near vacuum then.
Well, it's
It
not a
can be very
vacuum
close.
under the definition of what a vacuum is. So people need to
Yeah.
stop referring to it as vacuum, because there's obviously
Yeah,
something
well,
there.
that's incorrect then. Like if you were going to be precise, you would just change that to a near vacuum, very close to a vacuum.
What you would say is that's
you're
a
right.
low,
There's
a
no
low
perfect
pressure.
vacuums.
It's a low pressure system, you would say.
Yeah, it's just there's just less stuff there.
So it's a low pressure system.
Yeah, right.
So even when we try and make vacuums here on Earth, there's still something in there. It's not a void. It's not an area where there's no thing.
But that's the point I wanted to express, though, is that I've already showed you from where it goes from 10 to, or from 15 to 10, so 4 or 5 difference. And up there, it's already less than 1. So where balloons go to, it's already far less than 1. So we're talking about if you're trying to go from there to a vacuum, that's already 1 to 0, which is already less of a difference than
You're talking about
me
the
to
gradient
Colorado.
thing again. Are you talking about the gradient thing again?
Well, I'm just saying that there doesn't need to be this container. Like there's not a container that makes it.
Show me any sort of pressure or gas without a container.
Well, that's why I was describing that.
It defies all known practicality in physics. What you're talking about is conceptual physics, no actual tangible physics.
Well, let me ask you then, why does there have to be, why is there not one between 15 and 10 psi here to Colorado? There doesn't need to be one. But all of a sudden, when you get up to 1 to 0, there has to be one.
You're talking about weight now, though. If you're taking the reading like a barometer, you're measuring the weight of the column.
That's right.
Right. So what I say to you,
that's what causes the pressure.
So, but you're making that scale. Okay, so as I says to you, just to make you understand, if you stand on the scales with your feet, you're going to read whatever your weight was, I'll say 12 stone, right? Now, if I take a thin slice off the top of your scalp, and then I place the scales here, and I put that thin slice on the top, it's not going to read anything.
Yeah, it's just kind of.
But there's still a mass there, there's still something there.
No, yeah, you're right, but and what you said about the pressure of the column of air, that's what creates the pressure, right? Is the weight of the air above you. And as you climb up and up, there's less and less weight, and if you got to the very top, there's so little above it that it is freely moving around, and it almost is.
There'll still be something there.
Yeah, and that's why it goes towards nothing.
No,
it doesn't pull it all away.
There's no such thing as no thing. I mean, there's no such thing as no thing. There's still something there. Are you saying we exist in nothing? No,
we exist where the matter is. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm saying. What would be pulling the atmosphere away?
What do you mean? What would be pulling it? Gas pressure. Pressure pushes outwards equally in every direction and seeks to fill the container.
That's right.
So if there was nothing, if this was just a rock in a medium that's a vacuum, there wouldn't be any here. It would just dissipate.
That's correct.
It would just dissipate. It would just go.
Yeah, but if you had instead of air, you had like I'm trying to think of a magnetic gas, but I can't think of one. But the idea of the rock itself being able to attract things to it, including the air.
Show me a rock attracting another something. Then show me get a rock, put it into a vacuum, and then pressurize the rock and show me it.
Well, that's a problem. That'll be a problem.
Right, because it's not real. Because it's impossible.
Be able to do something like that on Earth.
It's impossible. So it's nonsensical. It's pseudoscience. Well,
we wouldn't expect it to do anything though either. So, like if you're on Earth, you have Earth's gravity to defy. If you can't get past Earth's gravity, then you can't do a test like that.
So we've just got an excuse then. So it's circular reasoning. You're just going to say it is that way. I can't demonstrate it in any way, shape or form. I just have to have blind faith in these people that are telling me that's the way it is.
I mean, we just described why and how. Like, whenever you said the gas dissipates and it goes every direction, yet there's more pressure down low and there's less up high, and the pressure is because of the weight. So obviously the gases are being pulled towards the Earth just like everything else. I mean, isn't that the conclusion of that?
No, well the gases are cooling down as they go up, which makes them more dense, which causes them to come down. And then they're heated. Then they're heated back up. They rise, and the cycle just keeps going.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But something is pulling them down. We know what brings them up is because they want to dissipate. And they want spread out.
Aye,
But what's bringing them
through
down?
temperature, which causes a pressure variance, so it becomes less dense, so it goes up the way.
Well, I would say that they go down for the same reason everything else does.
No, once it goes up, it cools down, and then it becomes more dense. It contracts into a denser form and falls back down.
Yeah, but then it has to be a force doing that, right?
Aye, but that's when you're going to say something's pulling it. But there's no such thing as
Yeah,
pull creating motion like that. Has to be something
something
pushing.
Yeah. Something is compelling all things to the earth. Everything that's still on the earth.
Well, that's
these things
the point. That's the point of me having this discussion, because people's interpretations of that are wrong. People are asserting things that are wrong in regards to that. That's my whole point of this. People are observing effects and then jumping to conclusions about the cause, and people are utilising it and extrapolating on it into the concepts of globular earths or whatever they want. You know, or you've got a concavers who are saying it's a pressure that's being forced. I mean, theirs makes more sense than the globular, because at least you've got something that's causing a pressure which is pushing outwards to make the gas come down the way, the water come down the way and cling to the inside of a sphere. They've actually got more leeway than the globe has. That's, you know, although it's nonsensical as much as the globe, it still has more validity to it. I can actually understand that. The globe I can't, because it's just drivel.
Go ahead. Sorry.
For one, the globe's not a container. What?
No, sorry. I thought you were finished. I was just saying I have your email, and so I can send you some of these pictures that I have from the comet rocket, or what do you call it, the Vomit comets, whatever they call them.
I don't want pictures, mate. I need some sort of mechanical interaction with the substances in my reality so that I can formulate an understanding of them. Then I can recreate it, and then I can, you know, extrapolate on that. So if you have mechanical aspects that I can actually demonstrate, please send me them. But don't send me rhetoric.
I was going to show you the water.
I don't want... What's that?
The water, like when you're in those comet vomits, or vomit comets, that you can see the water coalescing around an object, like completely surrounding it.
Aye, but a vomit comet's a false equivalence. That's not the conditions that we exist within.
It's not exactly a false equivalence, though. It's
Are you now going to say? So what you're then going to say is we're actually in a container that's falling through a medium that's air?
No, I'm showing you what happens whenever you defy gravity, because by falling at the same time as everything else, in the brief time that you're doing that, everything's going to be attracted to. They're going to be able to behave in the way they would if there were not gravity. So that's why I call it zero gravity. So you can see what water would do if there were not gravity there to pull it down.
You're using conditions that are nothing to do with the natural world.
Well, I would say that it would be what the world's doing if you turn.
The world is no moving. The world is in an air pressure. That's the world. I'm not inside a container falling through a medium of air.
No, but I'm saying the water and the air will conform around the object.
In those conditions, that's not the conditions of the natural world. That's not a natural phenomena.
Yeah. I've tried to say this to a lot of people, that if you can see that everything is compelled towards Earth, what's hard about the water doing that?
Things fall downwards, that's the point. Things are falling downwards. The concepts that are given and the descriptors of the cause of that is where I have an issue. I don't deny things are falling. And again, it's got nothing, that this topic has got nothing to do with the dimensions of the Earth. It makes no difference to establishing and quantifying the dimensions of the Earth. So, anyway, I feel as if I've spent enough on this. We're just going to go around in circles, and I don't want to exhaust it too much. So, we'll just call it a day there, mate, and I appreciate you coming on.
Sure, it was a pleasure talking to you. I mean, I appreciate it.
Cheers, man. Take care.
Take care.
I'll make a smoke here, and then we'll have a look at a couple other bits and bobs. everybody's entitled to their opinions, you know. At the end of the day, manners and speaking with respect goes a long way for me, regardless of, you know, people's beliefs and what they want to imagine to be true. That's by the by. You know, the humility first and foremost is the bonus for me, and being able to engage with people without, you know, antagonistic type behaviours, you know. So I can only thank the man for having a go at it. And again, I've got nothing horrible to say, and I don't condone it. You know, there's no need for any of that. You know, regardless of whether you agree or disagree. You know, the way in which things can be discussed is what's important. So I can only thank him. Well, maybe so, Chelsea Deluxe, maybe so. But we can still highlight the inconsistencies and the problems in regards to discussion. You know, whether people are at it or no. If you just understand how to question and what it actually is that's being proposed to you, then you can start to highlight that content and see where the problems are. So it's of use. Right. Let's look at some other things here. Let me have a wee look. So I was going to show the Julius Sumner Mill. There's a couple of wee interesting things in that we can have a look at. That's there to be discussed. So let me see, what else was I looking at? I was looking, some people putting idiotic fucking proofsies. So let me just share the screen. You know, it's important for people to see these things. This is the type of nonsense that the people will desperately, you know, try and utilise in order to, you know, confirm their bias. So this was somebody that's posting this flat earth, water always level, explain this flat earthers. And you've got a guy here with a container showing you surface tension at that small scale, right? And there's no meniscus here, because meniscus will only happen, you know, within a parameter of, I think it's an inch or something, of, you know, any wide containment, and you'll get a type of meniscus where you get an adhesion happening, where the water will kind of cling to the inside of the glass, and you'll get this. But that goes away as soon as you expand out from an inch, right? And then they'll show you this. A container of perfectly still water displaying surface tension. Now, what they should do is cut a section at the glass here, right? So that we've got a decrease in elevation from that point to this point, just a wee bit. You know, we need something like a millimetre of deviation from the level, and water will flow. So it's either just blind stupidity and ignorance and desperation in order to find some bias to reaffirm their beliefs, or people are just at it. You know, again, they show you a container and they put water in it and think that they're proving that bodies of water are bending around the exterior of objects. Bizarre. Let me see, let me just have a wee quick scan through here at what I had. This is another one actually. This is a belter. Seen this before. People are posting this as proof that water sticks to the outside of a ball. Now the ball is in a body of water here, a container. The water's fucking running off the ball back to the collector, the container beneath it, and they'll share this.
Welcome to the machined pocket that's spherical. The one we did in Baltimore, very short segment, weighs 10,000 pounds. But as I said, this is the largest of these sculptures in the world, at least to my understanding. This particular one, now if you go out and you look up, this is called the Grand Kugel.
Oh.
And if you try to look up 24 tons to 84 tons. Well, I couldn't have that, so I went ahead and I did the calculations. 2.75 tons.
Whatever.
I'll put those exact huge piece of granite. I don't even know how you would machine something like this. But as you can see,
Well, apparently you don't need to machine it because the natural world just made it. Because apparently the natural world turns everything into spheres eventually. So maybe that's billions of years old and the magical, invisible, mystical force made it into a sphere and polished it.
it is rolling around on this thin film of water. Now, some of the folks, when we did this smaller one up in Baltimore, had asked, how is that possible? How does that work? Well, I've got a link to the paper down below that was published about how this actually works. So if you're really good at integral and differential calculus and partial differentials, I'm sure you'll have no problem understanding the physics of how this works. If that's not really your shtick.
So the wee thin film of water, right, that's causing an upward force. The other force that's acting through it, reaching through it to pull it. That wee thin film of water's acting against it.
Then to the water, and it is absolutely imperative that this is perfectly spherical, that both surfaces, the receiver and the ball, are perfectly matched in their diameter.
Aye.
Otherwise this won't work. This was originally put here.
Yes, or the centre of mass will be imbalanced and it will no roll. Anywho, Globe proponents need to stop using false equivalencies and embarrassing themselves with utter nonsense like that. Right? So it's just no funny. Right. When liquid is cooled, it contracts like one would expect until a temperature of approximately 4 degrees Celsius is reached. After that, it expands slightly until it reaches the freezing point, and then when it freezes, it expands by approximately 9%. So you get fluctuations in pressure by temperature all over the place. Okay, and you get motion happening, wind currents and blah blah blah, because there's fluctuations in pressure due to temperature changes. Right. What's going on here? Well, the prior examples of a gas pressure being created and maintained without physical containment, I swear to God, they've started linking me this. Let me see what this is about.
Have you ever looked out your plane window and wondered what the hell those little curly bits at the end of the wing were for? The development of winglets, as we see
It's to balance it. I know this because my engineer mate was telling me about this. Hang on.
them today, started during the 1973 oil
So you asked them, hold on, about gas pressure or something.
crisis. The Arab states put an oil embargo on the United States for providing aid to Israel in the Boer War. This caused forcing engineers to get creative to reduce fuel consumption. Enter Richard T. Whitcomb.
And that was the crux of the geometries again, because they use this for everything: the vertical, the horizontal, plumb, and the level.
Richard T. Whitcomb. I could probably do an entire video on this guy's contribution to aviation, but let's focus on his work with winglets for now. Part of his inspiration came from birds that curl their wing feathers up while gliding to achieve more lift. So he got to work testing this theory and found that it worked exactly as he expected. Let's take a look at the science. As you probably know from watching my previous videos, planes fly by developing high pressure air under their wings and low pressure air above. Fluids will always flow from high pressure regions to low pressure regions, and this can cause...
Really? Really? You want to start telling some of these morons that think we exist in a medium that's a vacuum then? Because they think it's different. That's all true. But my God force turns it in its head, and it's contrary to every aspect of our understanding of the mechanics of our reality that we apply. Aye.
Cause some problems at the tips of the wing. High pressure air from below will bleed into the low pressure air above, creating mini tornadoes off the tips of the wing. This is called induced drag, and it decreases the lift of the wing and increases the fuel consumption of the plane. Winglets reduce this airflow by reducing the pressure gradient at the tips of the wings, thus making the vortices much smaller. Their ultimate goal is to create a lift distribution across the wing in the shape of an ellipse. This minimizes the amount of air that wants to flow over the tips of the wing while maintaining maximum lift. Let's compare some wing shapes and their lift distributions to see how...
Right, so let me just stop that to see what the point was there. So Celtic 67 asks them for a practical example of a gas pressure being created and maintained without physical containment. That's what they're sending them. A physical interaction within the medium that already is the pressure. It's just nonsensical crap, you know. See, you know, the majority of people here already know that, you know. I feel the need to go over some of these things because, you know, maybe new people who are being confused by the sophistry out there, no understanding exactly what's going on. The open I'm reading here, this is from what, Khan Academy. What does pressure mean? If you try to hammer a bowling pin into a wall, nothing would probably happen except for people deciding to no longer lend you the bowling pins. However, if you hammer with the same force on a nail, the nail would be a lot more likely to penetrate the wall. This shows that sometimes just knowing the magnitude of the force isn't enough. You also have to know how that force is distributed in the surface of impact. For the nail, all the force between the wall and the nail was concentrated into the very small area on the sharp tip of the nail. However, for the bowling pin, the area touching the wall was much larger and therefore the force was much less concentrated because there's more surface. Pressure is defined to be the amount of force exerted per area. Anyway, I'm not going to bother with any of that now. Specific gravity. We'll talk about that later. They're basically telling you it's cancelled out. It doesn't really matter because you're just putting an object into water and see how much water it displaces. I can't be bothered with it. It just tires you, you know, this bullshit, nonsensical jargon that they come out with. Why the surface of water is always flat. The surface is only curved when it is too small, less than 1 square inch. Due to surface tension, then it is called a meniscus. Due to the flat surface, liquids will always flow to any lower point, even at just 1 millimetre difference, towards finding their new level. So on this Cora, whatever it is, Cora, whatever, I don't know. The question was asked, why is the surface of water always flat and horizontal? Somebody's getting an answer. You know it's not. Have a careful look at water in a half full glass. See how the water curves up the glass at the edges within a set parameter of 1 inch. I don't get it in anything else. My cup of tea is now clinging up the was of the cup and I'm still using containers. Don't need that, don't need that, don't need that. Right. Let me see what people are saying here. What's happening, people? Have we learned anything? What's the matter with Brandon Esteban? He's having a wee tantrum there. What's the matter with him? Is he crying? What are you doing, boom me? Good, best vids ever. Glad to hear that. Falafel sandwiches and chips, you enjoy that? A concave preacher. I keep asking, oh, right. Dan, you're there. There's Dan's new channel. Add moderator. There you go. Oh, should I just check that was you first? Aye, that's him. So Dan, Crazy Polish Man 2 there. Channel was whipped. Cheers Celtic 67. Hey Dale, what about those modern day astrophysicists? Share how they're all indoctrinated themselves. I don't know what that means. Half pipe Earth. Half pipe Earth makes a lot more sense than any of the other ones. At least we're on the grounds of containment then. Well, that's it, Emerald Rider. It all comes down to what's, you know, reality is mechanical. We need to be able to demonstrate things in a mechanical, practical fashion, you know, and break every aspect of it apart so that we know all the components and we know we've got an understanding. If we don't, if there's anything missing in there, then we're barking up the wrong tree. I'm good, mate, thanks. Same to yourself. Super helium liquid cannot be contained.
In the naturally evaporating liquid helium cools until at 2 degrees above absolute zero, a dramatic transformation takes place.
Looks as if it's in a container to me.
Suddenly, you see that the bubbling stops and that the surface of the liquid helium is completely still. The temperature is actually being lowered even further now, but nothing particularly is happening.
That looks like a
this,
container to me.
This is really one of the great phenomenon in 20th century physics.
But this is all containers, I mean.
Helium had turned into a superfluid which displays some really odd properties.
Here I have a beaker with an unglazed ceramic bottom of ultrafine porosity.
Ordinarily, this container with tiny pores can hold liquid helium. But the moment the helium turns superfluid, it leaks through.
So there's holes in it. I just told you.
Container with tiny pores can hold.
Tiny pores, which means there's holes in it. Take away the wee tiny holes and it's still going to be contained. And it's in a beaker. Pay attention. People just watch things and I don't think they listen. I'll check that out further. Thank you. I don't know, people just don't listen when they watch stuff. I mean, the guy's telling them. Aye, so anyway, where was I going? Wait a minute. Let me just see. Let's have a look at Julius. I like Julius.
Is the idea of center of gravity. A marvelous
They're an
thing
honest man. The idea.
to consider, really, and fantastic in its consequences for the human race. Consider the following. I have here a double track, which is downhill to my left. Here I have a cylinder of wood, which, as you know, will go downhill, as any respectable cylinder should do. But here I have another geometrical form, and I put...
Yes, because you're fucking with the equilibrium. You're causing a decline from the level, which is causing the weight to fall over itself.
Put it at the bottom of the plane, and lo and behold, it goes uphill.
Huh,
and
amazing.
that's a strange business. Well, friction forces are holding it there. So, you see, it goes uphill. And a proper understanding of this lies in an understanding of center of gravity, an idea we got first from Archimedes in about the 3rd century BC. Consider a stick, a meter stick. If it was a good stick, as I would like to have it, it would have to be uniform, homogeneous, and isotropic. Those are wonderful words to know the meanings of. Supposing the stick weighs...
How many people are hitting Google right now?
10 pounds. And I support it with 2 fingers like that. It is clear that each finger pushes up with 5 pounds each. 5 plus 5 is 10. The stick weighs 10 down.
But the magical force is acting through that.
Indeed, if I move the fingers elsewhere, I still exert 10 pounds up, but in 2 places. Now, can I not find a place such as that right there?
The center
where
of the
I
mass.
exert a force of 10 pounds up. And we are then led to say that all the stick is right there. All of it. And that's the center of gravity of the stick. Incidentally, I could use also the phrase center of mass.
Aye.
And I leave it as an exercise for you and your teachers
Yes.
to find the
It
difference.
is the centre of mass, but sophists want to change it to fit their conceptual ideas. So, it's the centre of the mass. Julius Sumner-Miller's great. You know, the guy gets through practicality. Yeah, you know, you have to suspend some of the words he's using right enough, but at least he's honest enough to put it out there. The idea, and then that you could interchange both terminologies, centre of gravity, centre of mass. You know? Anyway, anybody else got anything to say in regards to this matter? Candidate with a ring. Maybe have to stand it on the side and find the equilibrium point and get it to balance there. And you would still find a central equilibrium point, centre of mass. As I was pointing out to him with the donut thing, Julius Sumner-Miller points it out. You take away that part, there's nothing there. There's fucking nothing there. Oh, it's still the centre of mass. It's no mass there though, I know, but stuff, reasons. So, the main points, again, when we're talking about objects, motion, we should know. And again, people, you need to get practical. If you don't doubt or you don't understand what I'm saying, just have a look at every aspect of your reality. Every time you're moving something or something's moving, and you will notice that something's causing a pressure on it to make it move. It just appears out of nothing exactly. Yeah, I'll just check here. If anybody's got anything to add in regards to what's been discussed here this evening, you can still send me an email. So send me an email if it's in regards to anything that's been discussed this evening. For anything else, that's for the Saturday night, and you can come on and talk about whatever you want. But when I'm doing these types of, you know, broadcasts, shows, I want to stick to the topics that we're discussing. So now when you're hearing people talking about acceleration, forces causing motion, and they're talking about downward forces and all this stuff, and downward acceleration and all that, there's no such thing as something pulling something. Something's in equilibrium, and I cause a depression at one point here, knocking it out its equilibrium, it's going to fall into that place. But that's not what globers are describing. talking about space-time and all this stuff. Something that's not a fabric, it's not a thing, it's not a substance, it's just a concept. We know it with water. And it will just keep filling the void. As I say, anything away from the level, a slight deviation, and it will flow into it until it fills up and it finds the equilibrium again. The equilibrium is an equal horizontal plane. So anybody got any add? 5 minutes. We'll see if anybody's got anything. What's happening, people? What happened there? Where did that come in? Oh, I've got wee messages here. Oh, Mr. Cheswick, I see you've sunk something in there. How do I not get notified of these? Thanks for bringing up the Google censorship issue. Last night, I feel it's going to be hugely important in the future when certain events happen and no one can find anything other than 20 pages of mainstream bullshit and then it stops dead. Or for new people coming into FE, all they're going to get to research is 20 pages of pre-selected shite. Exactly, Mr. Cheswick, so I appreciate you highlighting that. Siddy El Capchi as well. Yes, I'm back, mate. Kieran Franny. I think it precludes us from the argument because we don't buy into their abstract ideas. It does, you know, this is the point. You know, people are talking about these abstract concepts and, you know, it has to be nipped in the bud. So you have to be asking the questions of these people why they don't get to the root of the matter and cut it off. Des Sherwood, Dale, did you see my second video on push-pull on my other channel? I certainly did, mate. On your other channel? What other channel? Pretty sure I did see that. No, because it's all connected, Emerald Rider, you see, and it's right at the very centre. Although there's nothing there. But it's at the centre where there's nothing. Or something. I don't know. I think they imagine like it's like an inverted thing that goes to another dimension and everything's being sucked into it, like kind of black hole type thing. I can only imagine what the fuck it is they're rattling on about. But you just don't understand. Right? So stop trying to use your common sense to figure out their waffle. Right? Because you just don't get it. You're not educated enough. Music and things, can you stick a wee link to it, Des? That rings a bell. Can you send a link in the chat? And if you can't, can you just send it in the email? What's this, Alan Atkinson? Don't know if you fancied this latest delusional offering, Dale. Did Nick Phuket Word know?
Welcome to my scientifically informed insider look at mental health topics. If you find this video...
Oh, let's have a wee laugh at this. Fuck it. Let's have a wee laugh at this. I'll give it 5 minutes, see what he's waffling on about.
Video to be interesting or helpful, please like it and subscribe to my channel.
Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today I have a few different questions about the Flat Earth movement. One question is, can I offer a critique of the film Behind the Curve, a 2018 documentary?
A hit piece propaganda movie with pre-selected dick sniffers waffling on about a lot of crap. That's what Behind the Curve's all about, and they took somebody like me and stuck me in there and tried to lump me in with all these people. Right? Just a total nonsense fucking hit piece, propaganda piece of shit, Dr. Todd Grande. Right? Stop taking wee cherry picked bits of whatever you want and then trying to generalise across the full board and lump everybody under that banner, right? What kind of fucking psychologist or whatever you are you, right? You're not a very clever one.
About the Flat Earth movement, and can I talk about some myths?
What's the Flat Earth movement? Define what you're talking about. Loaded terms. Another sophist, agent of propaganda. Either that, he's just too dumb to know what he's up to.
Of the Flat Earth movement. So I'll answer both those questions in this video. So first, taking a look at this movie, Behind the Curve. We see here that it's been called a documentary about science, specifically a documentary about the scientific method being misunderstood, but it's also been called a documentary about mental health. So it's kind of interesting and in a way kind of
mental health, people running about believing they live on an oblate spheroid, nonsensical, contrary to their everyday lived life experience that contradicts actual tangible physics, but yet they run about shouting buzzwords, mantras and phrases. Gravity, seen it on the TV, 2,000 years ago, such and such said so. My teacher told me, my mammy told me, the TV told me. That's fucking mental illness, okay?
Controversial. Now the people...
I can't be arsed with him. Cannot be fucking rat's arsed with clowns like him. I'm pretty sure Nick Phuket Word done a more extensive video on that clown. So people should check that out. I can't be fucking bothered with him. They all talk about mental illness and this, that and the other. It's the Globe proponents and people that believe it blindly that are mentally ill. Okay? I understand it. I know it's nonsense. The majority think they understand it, don't realise it's nonsense, but run about defending it. There's mental illness defined for you. The majority are the poster children of Dunning-Kruger. Willful ignorance, blind faith, zealotry. So, Mr. Todd Grandy, shut up, son. Come here and speak to me. Let's see how your psychological analysis gets on. You can be my subject. I'm going to prod and poke you. Aye, Gav, I'm here. I'm a couple of hours into this, I think. I done on 18 minutes ago. Fucking hell. Aye, pretty sure Nick done a number on him. I don't know, Chris F.E. Jackson's, you know, I think that's true with, you know, quite a lot of cases, but these people, you know, it doesn't matter how many times it's pointed out to them and highlighted to them, they continually rattle on about the same crap. So I start to think that they do know what they're saying. They know exactly what they're partaking in. Let me just see, I'm not sure if Gav's going to join us here. Gav's going to come in. Gatekeeping is obvious. Who's trying to get a hold of me here? Dale, can we all donate money to your experiment build blocks of a large body of water? Well, I keep saying, if people are up for, making these things achievable, then give me a shout. I'll just put the idea out there. Certainly, Vigo.
Hey man, how you doing?
How's it going, mate?
Hi, good. I didn't see you were on. I never got a notification.
No.
Strange.
Bizarre. How you been?
I'm pretty busy.
Aye.
Bit tiring at the moment, so.
Aye. The traps of life, Gav.
Oh, I live life just prevents you from doing the things you want to do, innit? Or,
Exactly.
no, well, usually prevents you from doing the things you want to do.
The pressures.
But, yeah.
The pressures. That's what I've been on talking about. I was on highlighting again, just to get you up to speed with what I've been doing this evening. Listening to people talking about motion and forces that cause motion or acceleration and blah blah blah. So what I was just highlighting was that all the mechanical principles and direct reality, the aspects of pressure, motion, is created by something pressing on something else. So highlighting that, we get to these levels of discussion again where all that practicality gets pushed out the window, and we're now talking about, forces and, motion being created by pulley stuffs and, and there's no such fucking thing. There's no, mechanical reference for pulling. It's just a description of an object coming closer to another object. It's no a mechanical interaction of two substances. Do you know what I mean? So,
no, absolutely. That's the problem, that most people have just, attached themselves to mathematical physics concepts, right?
Yeah.
And not to, physical bodies. Yeah. And that seems to be the big difference. I know we talked about that the last time, that physicists see the whole world as mathematical physics, and the terms and the labels and the words they use, are divorced from actual bodies of real substance.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, reality's, as far as I'm concerned, worth defending, Dale, but all these people who want to push all these concepts and ideas, I think are just lost in that, how should I say, whole looking up to mathematics and mathematical physics as being something that's real.
Aye.
And it's not. It's just we've said it so many times, it's just a descriptor.
Aye.
And you can't possibly have, anything that's not pushing on something else. You need bodies to actually do the pushing. And there can't be nothing in between that's doing nothing and it's wrapped up into a concept or an idea.
Yeah.
But that's what people seem to believe nowadays. It's very unfortunate.
I think it's just as you were saying there, mate, that seems to be the problem. Mathematics and these concepts are pushed, and I think because people think because they understand them and that they can envision some of these concepts that somehow lends validity to it, but it's not. It's just an abstract concept, an idea as you say, it's totally divorced from actual reality and the physical interactions required in order for acceleration or motion to occur. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I always get back to the very simple one, just to make people, how should I say, very aware of when a label and a definition and a word gets used. Speed's the ideal one.
Yeah.
You can't measure speed. You can't put speed in a bottle.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's a concept. It's a label you give to something when distance is travelled, which is the length of a substance, a road, a fence, whatever, a wheel turning around. But you can't just, the speed of itself is not a physical thing. It's a label that's attached. So anything that relies on speed, like force, for example, is also just a label attached to it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, but people seem to get involved and think that these things are real. And I think that's one of the things that mathematical physics has managed to push into the psyche of at least all the people that have studied it. They believe it. Yeah. And then even the general public is massaged into believing that these things are real with all the imagery and stuff we get. Yeah. So,
well, that's it. The guy on that was trying to kind of defend and try to define. And that's the bit that they just don't seem to grasp. Understand their conceptual notions, but what they're missing is a mechanical reference of practicality that's divorced from what we've described. You need some substance interacting or pressing on some other substance in order for motion to be created, but they just you can't grasp it.
It's a blockage.
Then pools start to talk about warping and bending of space times, and you're like, come on, fuck. It's not a thing again. It's just an abstract theory concept. Just as you're saying, speed. It's not the mechanics. It's not the intrinsic interactions of substance that they're missing in these notions. But.
Well, that's the thing. People seem to think that the qualities of things can be in ideas and concepts, Dale, and they can't be. They have to be in real bodies. It's only a body that has a real quality of something, whether it's hard, soft, can be hit up, has a shape, has a form, has a weight, all these things are only applicable to bodies and not to ideas and concepts of imagined things. And just because you can put a label on it and tout it doesn't mean it's real.
Exactly.
But I understand the frustration, and I don't know what this guy was saying, but if he's caught up in that same old world of just believing what academia have told him, then he probably has no common sense left. Yeah.
Right. I think the important thing is just to reiterate to people is when we're talking between each other, we have to have practical reference. Because if we don't have practical reference, what are we talking about? We're talking about fairy dust and leprechauns. It's useless. Again, try to point to people, I don't need a language. I need something that, attached to real worldly facts, which is substance, objects, demonstration. That's what's required. No, the spoken word. Spoken word just confuses people,
Yep. Oh, absolutely spot on.
Unless we can agree upon the spoken word, which is attached to real world factual things, and we agree and we have that agreement, and then we know what we're talking about. But if without that, we're just talking about fucking fairy dust.
Just talking past each other, right? I remember, I think it must be 4 years ago, about a reasonable discussion that's defined in them terms. And if you can't have that agreement with two people, right, then there's no point in talking.
No.
Absolutely none.
No.
Then we might as well just let the mental patients argue about who's more mental.
Exactly.
Right? But there's no point in arguing with a mental patient who doesn't have that first principle in common with you and agrees that bodies are necessary. Real physical substance is necessary. If somebody can think, well, okay, no, I can talk about invisible stuff and it doesn't matter if you don't believe in it. There's no point in having that conversation, Dale. Absolutely none.
And they should be restrained from asserting these things, particularly in an education system, as factual. Again, that's a huge aspect to the problem here. That these things are talked about as if they are real bodies and real things. There's no intellectual honesty. I was just highlighting a wee bit of Julius Sumner Miller, an older generation. And he's interchanging, and he actually makes the point, this idea of centre of gravity and then he makes the statement. You know, you can interchange that with centre of mass. You know, so there's two distinctions to be made there, and he's recognising it and putting it up front. Whereas nowadays, it's just spoke about as given, you know, which is a real issue.
Yeah, no, they use too many synonyms that, they get confused and not properly defined to begin with.
A perfect example of the guy that was on before, you know, we're talking about push-pull. You know, and push-pull, you know, require the same, you know, aspects of the motion, but they just describe something coming closer or something going further away, two objects, and then he was interchanging that with attraction and repulsion. I'm like, it's just the same thing, using a different set of, different words, but you're still not giving me any mechanical properties of body and interaction. That's the thing.
The one they usually bring up then is magnetism.
Well,
we've talked about magnetism as well. That's the one they'll bring in and say, "Look, that's pulling." But again, all they're doing is describing the effect of two objects coming closer together within a geometrical arrangement.
Yeah.
And that geometrical arrangement has some kind of electrical effect, and then they'll dive into little balls, protons and electrons, and as if it all means something. But and then these things are all filled with a little void as well. There's space in between all that stuff. There's more space than there is stuff, And you're like that. We're back to the same old problem.
But as I was
just describing stuff.
But as I was pointing out, magnetism is not fully understood and defined either. So and it's also a false equivalence, because you're not saying that it's a magnetic attraction, and even to use that word, the attraction. Well, what's the mechanics again of a magnet? What's actually happening there? Nobody knows, so they're just trying to grasp at anything. It's like image based, and that's what they're stuck in, rather than getting to the fundamental mechanics of what's actually happening.
I mean, there's many competing theories about electromagnetism over the years, right? From J.J. Thomson over Maxwell, to all the people that had a go at it. And I don't think there really is a clear understanding of what's going on there.
But I mean, building up to the magnetism, as I said to the boy before, everything else is dictating to me that something has to press something else in order to make motion happen. But yet again, when we come to something that's no understood, you want to try and make it that it's something totally different. Well, the same. I don't see any reason why these same principles wouldn't be applying to magnetism. Yet, just that we don't have a full understanding of what's happening. So it could be the ether, it could be anything going on there that we just don't fully grasp yet. But to say that it's going to be something contrary to every other practical example, I just don't see the reasoning behind that.
No, that's a leap of faith, really, in a new theory, rather than looking at the practical world and deducing things from it.
Yeah.
That's a general induction that people are still to be disproven as far as they're concerned, but they'll take it to be true as long as nobody can disprove it. And then they'll flip the burden of proof and say, well, what explanation have you got? So, but just because they've got an explanation doesn't make it the actual mechanics of it.
No. And their explanation's nonsensical, because to describe like a pool, like, how do you get something closer towards you without something pushing it? I mean, it just doesn't.
Yeah, you can't. No.
It's like, how do I get you to come towards me? Like, ooh, some woo-woo. Fucking.
It's not going to happen anytime soon.
No,
no, Dale, just a sec.
You need to come in one time, Chris, and have a wee discussion about some of that. Although that I'm not up to speed on. I'll need to have a wee dig myself. Send me an email, Des.
This video?
I did get it because I'm subscribed and I've liked it. So what I'm going to do is copy the video. I'll stick it in there. Des, who gives guitar tuition as well. He's got another wee channel, and he was just making the point because Des had the realisation of what I was talking about in regards to push. And in that case, he was talking about, you know, how we call hammer-ons and pull-offs in the guitar world, and how a pull-off is not really what you think's happening, it's actually a push-off. So, check it out, people. He does some support as well. He's offering up, you know, tuition and guitar if anybody's interested in that as well. So you can also subscribe to his main channel there, which is just Des Sherwood Guitar Tuition.
Hey, Dale. Sorry, something's going up. I'll need to jump off, man. Sorry.
No worries, mate.
Catch you soon. Catch you tomorrow.
Take care, mate. I'll see you soon.
Yeah.
Right, people, I think that's about it. So, points have been made. As I say, on the Beyond the Magic Curve live channel, I gave some practical examples of push, you know, and the misconceptions that people have, and the Globedites were triggered, you know, to the point of a frenzy, and calling me retards and all that. I'm going to go and greet myself to sleep tonight on my big pillow, you know, just because they don't like actual reality. They don't like people pointing out the facts of actual reality. So, thank you as always, mods and everybody that's involved this evening, people watching. Take care of yourselves, people. I will see you again at the weekend. I'm planning on being at the university this week as well, so we'll see how that goes. See you very soon, people. Take care.